What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to be making a video in response to a question in our members chat private location within the Discord. That is for obviously members of the channel. Now here is the question. I have a few questions for you if you don't mind answering. What did your study routine look like when you first started learning Chinese? How much time did you spend on listening, speaking, reading, studying vocabulary, grammar? Okay, so this assumes, this question, obviously it's coming from a good place, it assumes that I knew what the fuck I was doing when I first started learning Chinese, as if I had a master plan at work here. And I think I understand where this comes from, okay? So you watch a lot of YouTube polyglots and people who talk about learning languages, and they talk about, you know, their perfect systems and how you got to do this and do that and do, you know, like you focus 30% of your time here or 30 minutes here, 1 hour here, and then you got to swap it up day by day and you got to use this fucking spreadsheet that's just filled with magic words and all this type of stuff. Like, they expect you to come in with the system and you share the system and you guys learn from the system. Well, I am unfortunately at this point going to tell you guys that I had no rhyme, rhythm, system, anything at play when I first started learning Chinese, okay? So this is probably not going to help you guys at all, except maybe just be a reflection of your own experiences and help you understand that most people do not learn languages in a perfect, you know, linear pattern that goes up over time. It doesn't work like that. In fact, I first dabbled with Chinese back when I was probably 27 years old, okay? I literally just learned a couple of words because that's when I met my girlfriend, who then later became my wife, okay? So I learned a few words. I think like one of the first words I learned, apart from the word for milk, was 喜欢, you know, to like. And I remember literally, this was me first day. We were walking to the train station together. I was beside her and she was trying to teach me something along the lines of I like something, okay? And I remember she kept drilling me over and over just on that X sound. She was like, no, it's not 喜欢, it's 喜欢. And I was like, what do you mean? I remember we just went backwards and forwards and we just played with that sound for like literally ages until she was like, yeah, you're starting to get it. Nope, you've lost it. It's gone. What are you doing? Go back to what you were doing. I was doing exactly what I'm doing right now. Like, that's literally how I started with the sounds of this language. There was no plan. There was no like structured course or anything. It was just me going backwards and forwards with a native, just trying to sort out this one word. That's pretty much it, okay? And then after that, I probably didn't touch the language for like 3 years, okay? But I was very good at saying that one word. That's pretty much it. I'd repeat that all the time. I'd be like, 喜欢. 喜欢. You know, just all the time. When it comes to like listening, speaking, reading, then I remember as I got more serious with her, I decided that I should probably learn some Chinese, okay? Now, at this stage, I was nearing fluency in Esperanto, or actually I was probably past fluency. I was nearing probably a C1 level, okay? And I remember that I wasn't quite sure how I should go learning a language like Mandarin Chinese because I came from an Esperanto background. And this is actually funny because every now and then I'll get comments from people who say, oh, you know, what you use to learn Esperanto, you can't apply that to other languages because Esperanto is a constructed language, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny that people used to say that back then as well. And therefore, what did I do? I didn't do what I did for Esperanto. I went out and did what everyone else recommended, or what the YouTube polyglots recommended, which actually turned out to not be the best way of doing things, and I should have just done what I originally did. But anyway, what I ended up doing was buying the Rosetta Stone course, because I remember watching some videos, some dude talking about how it was fucking amazing for Chinese, and you should get it. And I remember doing like literally the first entire chapter of it, which taught me some basic things, mainly like locational words, you know, this is on the table, he is running, he is walking, he is swimming, you know, these types of things. And I completed that course. And then again, I didn't touch it for a few years because other things in life started coming up. And then when I finally got back to it, I decided to get back into it when I was having to drive to work and I had a long trip. And I remember at this stage, people talking about Pimsleur. So I got Pimsleur Chinese and I completed the entire first one while driving to work over, I think, like a 3-month period because I was following the recommendations, you know, do one lesson a day. But I was doing one there and then I'd redo the same lesson on the way back because I actually felt like if I jumped to the next lesson, often I felt like I forgot half the shit anyway, so I had to go back and I kept doing that for about 3 months. I did all the first Pimsleur and then I didn't do anything again. Okay, so I stopped again. I came back at some random point and I started to apply some of the things that I'd done with basically Esperanto to Chinese. So I did a little bit of Anki, I added words and stuff, but unfortunately, I was adding in words as individual units and it wasn't really working out. So at that stage, I did a little bit more. I learned some more words. I learned a little bit more grammar. I actually got some books. I then went and did a short uni course, which was just 1 hour a week after, like work type of thing. I've actually got the books here. So I ended up actually doing this book here, Integrated Chinese, with this uni course, okay? And as I did this, I started to learn a bit more about the grammar. And this was actually the first time I actually learned anything about the script of the language. Up until this point, I'd just been avoiding the script. And I remember actually early on speaking with a fluent Chinese speaker who was a white guy. And he told me, he's like, you don't need to learn the script. You just learn everything via opinion. Forget the script. And because this guy was so good, I took this as gospel and I did not touch the script, okay? Now, he was so good from my perspective at the time. I actually don't know how good he is. Like, he seemed really good. So I was just like following him, follow someone who has done this before. Maybe he was actually only at the level I am now, or maybe, a little bit worse, or maybe a little bit better. I honestly can't remember. I just remember he was able to hold conversations similar to what I can. Now, I pretty much did all these random little recommendations, and then at the same time, I had big periods of stopping and starting. So, when it comes to how I first started learning Chinese, and you guys hear me speaking and stuff now, and how I dealt with listening, speaking, reading, studying vocab, all that grammar stuff, there was no plan to it. It was just absolute chaos of me picking up little bits and pieces. Now, after I did this course, okay, again, for a few years, didn't touch the language. This happened quite a bit because there'd always be something else that would come up in my life. Then I remember hearing about the, Japanese all the time. So I actually tried that for Chinese, and I did 300 plus hours of just listening to Chinese and no speaking. Now, I guess you could call that ALG, but at the time I wasn't even aware of ALG's existence, really. I was just watching a whole heap of content. And I guess that helped me a little bit with listening, but I really did not get much of the language from it. And again, I stopped. And do you guys want to know when I actually started again? It's actually around about the time when I started doing this YouTube channel, again, in English. So I would say 80% of my progression in Chinese has actually happened over the last 2 years. And if you want to know how I've progressed over the last 2 years, you just literally got to watch my videos about what I've done at different times and how I, basically face these types of issues. Like, I haven't spoken about prior to that because it's been a little bit here, then years off, a little bit here and years off, and no structure to the entire thing. What are some things you wish you had done earlier in your Chinese learning journey? In some ways, I wish I started Chinese at the time I started Esperanto and got good at it, because if I did Chinese at that time while I was doing Esperanto and then YouTube, I would have probably had a fucking massive Chinese YouTube channel right now, okay? And I would be fluent if I treated it with the same passion and energy that I had applied to Esperanto. But like, my entire life was basically wrapped around that language, and Chinese was kind of like an afterthought. So realistically, the only thing I wish I did do earlier, but then again, I can't say that it's hard to say. I wish I had more time to be able to devote the time that I did to Esperanto to Mandarin Chinese, because if I did, I'd be fluent right now. That's pretty much it. That's all I can really say around that, because I can't say I wish I didn't do Esperanto, because then the person who's speaking to you guys today would be a different human. That would not be me. Like, if you were to ask me, like, all the things I wish I had done, well, I was playing World of Warcraft in the military, not doing anything at all, okay? And then afterwards, I started to learn Esperanto. I wish I started learning Chinese while I was in the military, playing video games, and then I could have started a video game channel and fucking just blown the fuck up. There's so many regrets there, but, that's just life. But when it comes to Chinese, not so much. If you could go back to when you were a beginner, what would you do differently? I think I stumbled through the pronunciation side of things quite well. I got lucky because I had a native on hand to help me with those sounds. And in our early part of me, like in the early part of our relationship, me learning Chinese, she did help me a lot with the pronunciation of the sounds of the language, which is why I do sound, pretty good overall. So I would not change that. And that is definitely one thing I'd recommend all you guys do. Focus a lot on the tones and the sounds of the language, get those things down, because once you've got those down and you understand how those work, it becomes a lot easier. Like, there's a lot of YouTubers out there, not going to drop any names, Mikkel, who recommend that you basically just shadow your way to fluency. Okay, don't do that with Chinese. You will end up with a very weird sounding language. Okay, make sure you've got those tones and sounds down pat. This is very important for that language because they make it the sound. Okay, the sound inventory of Chinese is very small, and therefore minor mistakes can change the entire meaning of an entire sentence. Okay, this is not like English where you can screw up half the words and people will still understand you because, there's so many sounds and words are so large. Chinese is like literally every variation of a sound is used in multiple different ways in multiple different contexts. So it will completely change the meaning. So focus on the sounds and tones. Get that shit down pat. Okay. Even now, I sometimes wish I still focused a little bit more specifically on the vowels of Chinese early on because it still trips me up a little bit every now and then where I accidentally fall out of it. Like a common example people will point out is every now and then I'll pronounce some shipin wrong because I'll say like shipin rather than shipin. Okay. And what's happening here is that word was actually a word I learned very early on, probably around the time I was still kind of learning the sounds. Probably because, I was a YouTuber. And for whatever reason, that bad pronunciation for that word comes through every now and then. It's the same thing with the word green in Chinese. So like that lu seda, like that sound still sometimes just goes to lu seda. Like because again, it was early on, I was using Rosetta Stone and I was picking up the sounds from that as opposed to getting a native to correct me early on. Also, did you start speaking early on or did you wait until later? I spoke from day one, as you obviously got from, my example there. Literally from day one, I was speaking. Now, you might be then asking, is that a good or a bad idea? It really depends on your needs, okay? So if you have an active need to use and speak this language or whatever language you're learning, speak from day one. You can slowly correct these things up later. Now, you might be like, oh, but Evildea, you just said, you still screw up some words that you learned early on. Yeah, but like, the downside is I would never have been able to get to where I am in the language if I didn't start speaking early on. Like, speaking reinforces listening. Listening reinforces speaking. These things work together. They help each other. So when you listen to the language, you get a rough idea, a rough sketch of the sounds of the language. When you speak the language, you have to hyper-focus in on those sounds. And when you hyper-focus in on those sounds to basically produce that word, therefore you're able to hear that word better, okay? But having heard that word many, many times, when you do try to speak it, it also helps you picking out those minor faults. So you kind of want to both hear and speak the language as much as possible. That's my personal thoughts on the matter. But make sure you get those sounds down pat from day one, okay? And what helped you start speaking more naturally? Well, this is hard to say because there are still many instances where I don't speak naturally. And that's just due to the influence of, other languages upon my Chinese. But like for those instances where I do speak naturally, I would say that was mainly down to me practicing production sentences in Anki that use closed deletions. So basically, I would practice an entire structure and I'd close delete the parts that I wanted to practice. And those help me produce things more naturally. Because I did have that, 350 hour practice of just listening, okay? When I did try speak, naturally, my native language grammar started to apply upon Chinese, and that caused a lot of issues. So I guess in answering all these questions, the takeaway is I did not have a perfect system and still do not to this day have a perfect system for Chinese. And I cannot recommend a perfect system because I don't think there really is in a lot of ways. The only things I would say is make sure you get the sounds down. And then if you are a person for structure, work through a course, whatever course it is. But like these apps like Rosetta Stone, Pimsleur, Duolingo, they're great for getting some vocab in and even getting listening, but they won't take you very far. For example, Pimsleur, I remember reading somewhere that someone cut up every single sound, like every time Chinese is spoken uniquely within the Pimsleur cassettes, okay, and added them all together. And it gave, I can't remember, it was 2 or 10 minutes total of dialogue of just speaking unique sentences for that entire course. So it's not much. And Rosetta Stone, I think, will only get you a little bit further when it comes to that stuff. So you're going to have to do a lot of listening, but also you're going to have to practice a lot of natural sentences. And I've got the videos on my channel where, you know, I go into details about how to use Anki, what I would recommend if you're a certain type of person. But again, you have to figure out what you like and then just work at that. You're going to be at this for a very, very long time, no matter what. Like, if you took, like, I've been at this for 1,500 hours in total, but that 1,500 hours has been spread over a period of probably 10 plus years at this point, obviously with many years off and on. So I'm probably the worst person to be giving recommendations about this, but that is my journey. You guys wanted to know, or at least one of you did. Let me know down in the comments section below. Are you a person who planned out your entire journey from day one and have been following a consistent plan, or you, just like me, chaos incarnate, okay? Just randomly working your way up there, figuring it out. In fact, I would say, you know, since I started doing my challenges, that's where things have become a lot more structured and focused with the goal of progression in mind. Prior to that, I didn't really have too much of a focus. Maybe that is the secret. Maybe the secret is setting yourself a challenge and keeping yourself to account. And then, of course, the daily grind. That's pretty much it. See you all in the next video.